Familiar face, Seiji's POV. It has been more than 3 weeks, nearly a month since I completed my final selection. And it has been a week since my first mission where I encountered a demon none other than Michael fucking Jackson. Speaking of which, he wasn't in his Michael Jackson form when I met him, was he? Thinking about it, I felt scammed and robbed. Why did I have to encounter Zesty Demon King instead of Michael Jackson? My disappointment was immeasurable. On a positive note, it would seem that I was no side character who would die a dog's death just to show how cruel and bad the main villain was. It's been a week and I was still alive and sending demons to hell. Do you guys remember those 2 dudes who died after knocking Musen's shoulder and the woman whom he tortured by injecting his blood into her until her cells melted? Yeah, I was glad not to be one of them. Anyway, the missions I got afterwards all went extremely well. In fact, I had completed a total of 9 missions in the span of a week. Let that sink in, 9 missions were completed in a single week. For reference, Tanjiro took days to complete 1 mission. On the other hand, I completed more than 1 mission every single day. Truly, it was a feat worthy of a speedrunner. However, the main reason I was able to complete missions so quickly was my eyes. Of course they were my special cheat. Now imagine this, you are a demon slayer and you have a mission that said to investigate a village which had missing people recently. Now you go to this village and strangely enough, you find nothing wrong with it. Then you have to stay there and investigate for days upon days until the demon act up again. Only then could you slay the demon and save the village. I need not go through such things. I went to the village and with the help of my eyes, I could see the marks of demons and their blood demon arts. You usually find blood demon art in such villages as it is only demons with that kind of technique that would stay and terrorize a village. So I was easily able to find these demons and what was going on in the village. I did not need days to investigate. And even if the demon left no mark or used blood demon art, they usually have tunnels underground or a hideout. I was able to find such places with my eyes. Then I would slay the demons, which proved to be quite easy since I was already above lower moon level, I think. No demons have posed a serious threat to me. The only thing that took time was the traveling part and getting new missions. Speaking of which, I had a new Kasugai crow. Raven had proved to be too valuable as a companion to constantly act as a messenger. She sat on top of my head and she became another pair of eyes I had at the back of my head. That and also because I was getting missions too rapidly. Raven could not be bothered to go back and forth like that, so I got a new crow. An actual crow this time. In the end, Raven became a service animal for me, which was funny and fitting since I was deaf. A new mission. A new mission has arrived. The Kasugai crow said while circling above me. I think the higher UPS have realized my true strength and my desire to climb the ranks because missions have been coming at me non-stop. You would think at one point they would decide to give me a break, but nope, they came endlessly. Which honestly put a smile on my face. They said do something you love and you will never work a day in your life. It was true. I was doing just that, so there was no mental exhaustion for me. Where to? I asked the crow above. You need to slay the demon living in Mount Terumi. The demon has been hunting humans who walk through the mountain, but he is very adept in hiding, so this will require some tracking, the crow said. Complete the mission as quickly as possible and I will return. Caw. The crow flew away. Well. Shit. It's a mission that requires tracking down a demon. I hated these kinds of missions since it took a little longer than going to a village and killing the demon living there. I was adept at tracking as well with the help of my eyes and the experience I had in Mount Fujikasen, but it still took longer time than I would have liked. But the Demon Slayer Corp seemed to realize how well I performed in these kinds of missions to others, so they have been giving me similar missions these days. Whatever, I will make do with it. How many demons would this make? Counting Yaiba and Susumaru, it will be my 15th demon. 35 demons more to go before I become Hashira. Oh, I can see it happening in less than a month. How exciting. Raven, do you know the way? I asked and I received one short tap, two long taps and the final three short taps on my head. Yes, indeed she knows the way to Mount Terumi. Lead the way, I said and disappeared under the bright sun of midday. I aimed to reach there by night and quickly slay the demon. If it haunts humans going through the mountain, it should attack me as well. Or at least get close enough for me to chase after him. Let's go. Seiji's POV, Mount Terumi, oi. I called out. Not to bother you, but that is my demon you are killing. I said, my usually plain voice was displeased this time. Did I really travel all the way here just for someone else to steal my kill? I thought I wouldn't experience such things after coming to this world since League of Legends has not even been created yet. But here he was, an old man who was so short you would mistake him for a child. He had a prosthetic leg made of wood in his right leg. The prosthetic was a little longer than it should be, which hints that the old man wanted to look taller than he actually was. He had white hair and he was balding, but I would agree that he had a gorgeous mustache. All in all, I wouldn't say he was ugly, but he was definitely funny looking. Ah! A demon slayer, the old man said and took a huge breath that released streaks of yellow lightning. Would you mind giving me a hand? I have a hard time reaching his neck. He asked me while holding out a small Nikrin blade. It was a wakizahi. In front of him was a demon who was likely my target considering where I was. The demon was a tall demon with a thin frame as if he had not eaten in years. His bones protrude out of his sickly body in a horrific way. Like every other demon, he was ugly. But what really caught my attention instead was the old man. I think I know him. I racked my brain while the old man and the demon engaged in another fight. The old man was winning, but he was too short to reach the neck of the demon, which was pretty funny. He only had one leg, which kind of prevented him from leaping, and there were no trees around to use as a foothold. When the old man took a deep breath and lighting came alive around him, the memory finally popped into my mind. Right, it was him. The master of Zenitsu. What was his name again? Jigoro Kawajima. New sensei, Seiji's POV, Jigoro Kawajima. I totally read that off his Haori because there was no way I could have remembered the name of such a vague side character for that long. Young man. Jigoro called out while dodging the attacks of the demon who had somehow turned his arms into long blades. Was that his blood demon art? Turning parts of his body into blades? I observed the demon's biology carefully and concluded that he was not a threat. He could turn his body into steel blades, which required his blood gathering in parts he wanted blades, so he should not be able to turn any part of his body into a blade, much less simultaneously. But the thing that put him into the harmless category was his simplicity. You don't want to be simple when facing me. I took out my sword from my back and with a crack of my neck, I blitzed towards the demon. The enemy immediately took a step back as his instinct screamed at him. He pulled up his arms, which were blades, and shielded himself. But I had seen such a reply coming from miles away. I cut at the exact spot in his arm where steel connected flesh. My blade cleaved through his arm and then his neck. The enemy had no time to react. My action was resolute and it said, "Disappear." And so the demon's head hit the ground along with both his arms turned blades. By the time I sheathed my sword, his body had disintegrated to disappear from the face of the earth. One less demon in the world was a step towards a perfect world. Fuck them. Oh. You are quite the swordsman, young man. Jigoro said, I totally misjudged you, ha 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 ha. The same goes for you, old man. You might be tiny but you sure can fight. I commented plainly, which made the small jab I made more effective. He visibly reeled back. He might be small but the old man could really fight. Even if I had not intervened, he would have slayed the demon one way or another. I would expect nothing less from the former Thunder Hashira. Tiny? I will have you know I used to be average height when I was young. It's just that old age has shrunk me, he said in defiance. My eyes see through all lies. Not only that, I could construct how his body would look like in its prime by observing its current state. He was at most 2 inches taller when he was young. Right. Why do I get the feeling you don't believe me, he said. I do, sir. Really? Of course. You do then, ha 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 ha, he said with a laugh and twirled his long mustache. What's your name, kid? He asked me while he strapped his short sword back to his belt. Seiji Shirgan. I said. Seiji Shirgan, what exactly does it mean? Seer of Turth? Ruler of Will? Jigoro analyzed the meaning behind my name, but there was no exact meaning. My name could mean many things in kanji. I'm not sure what my parents intended as they died before I can ask them what my name means. I said. A demon killed them, he guessed. Yes, how did you know? Bah. Whose families aren't killed by demons? You see, it requires a unique kind of hate that can only come from having lost loved ones to become a demon slayer, he said with a nod. I see. Enough about that, what I want to know is which one of us old goats managed to create a monster like you, he said and rubbed his chin. He analyzed me up and down. I'd say you are already at the strength of a Hashira. How old are you? 14, well, 13 years 11 months to be exact. God damn those poor demons, ha 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 ha. I am certain you will be their greatest nightmare 10 years from now, he said, amused. So do tell, who trained you? No one. I said, I used to train kendo under Master Nato Takaharu in Tokyo, but that was it. I never had someone to train me in the ways of a demon slayer. You are not messing with me, young man. Positive. Well, that puts you in a completely different league again, he said thoughtfully, and also disprove my speculation that you are as strong as a Hashira. Without a breathing style, you will never cross that threshold. I wisely decided not to mention how I learned and copied flame breathing successfully in the span of a week. After a long silence, the old man suddenly revealed a wide smile on his face. My eyes also detect greed under his harmless smile. He wanted to have me all for himself, like a jeweler's smith who finds a diamond in the mud, ready to be polished. Tell you what, kid, my name is Jigoro Kawajima. A former Hashira, also known as the Lightning Pillar or the Roaring Hashira, he said with no small amount of pride in his tone. And if you want, I will be more than happy to become your trainer and pass down the secret art of thunder breathing to you, he said and grinned at me. So, what do you say? He asked. I would love to. I replied. It was a no-brainer. In my opinion, thunder breathing was one of the strongest breathing styles even in the context of the 5 original breathing styles. Not only that, I had already mastered flame breathing, so thunder breathing seemed like the next step since, you know, fire and lightning always have similar affinities in fiction like in the Avatar. It will also add more weapons to my arsenal. It meant I would have more varied ways to kill a demon. The thought of killing a demon so quickly that it had no time to pray and ask for forgiveness put a smile on his face. Without such a chance, it will make sure they go straight to hell. But, I said, I won't be able to do it now. Huh? And why not? He asked. I stayed silent for a while before I decided to tell him about my plan and my goal of becoming a Hashira in less than 2 months. At first, he thought it was ridiculous, but when he realized I was serious, he had a change in mind. He said it was always good for someone to challenge themselves and he respected my goal. So, can I come back to you in a month or so? I asked. There will be no need of such a thing, he said. I am actually quite free myself and have no student under me at the moment. So I can follow you in your missions. You are already physically more than capable, so I will only need to teach you thunder breathing. If you spare me 3 or so hours every day, it will be enough, he said. I remained silent and took a look at him again, this time in a new light. He was a nice old man. The reason why he wanted to follow me was not because he was desperate to teach me. In fact, it made no sense why he should trouble himself and follow me around just because he could get a few hours of teaching every day with me when I said I will seek him out for training in a month. The real reason was that he wanted to make sure I lived. The goal I had was a reckless one, even though Jigoro decided to respect it. To go on multiple missions consecutively without allowing myself time to rest or grow just for the sake of reaching a higher rank quickly was not a very wise choice without knowing the whole context. It screamed of the reckless, burning passion of youth. And Jigoro wanted to make sure I lived by accompanying me. He could help me in fights or advise me against my actions if he realized that I was putting myself in too much danger. In the end, he wanted the new generation to be safe, especially someone with talents like mine. Are you sure, Gramps? Can you even keep up with me? I said and glanced at his prosthetic leg. Nonsense, I was the fastest Hashira and would leave you to dust even today. He waved his hand. Well then. I said and bowed, thank you, I will be in your care. Same to you. Jigoro said with a smile. Something feels wrong. Bowing was a sign of respect because you basically put your head lower than the person you are bowing to. It was a sign of humility. But Jigoro was too short that my head was still higher than his even when I bowed. So I lay face down on the ground. Stop insulting me, brat. Thunder breathing, Seiji's POV, thunder breathing was fast. Fighting was like a conversation, where me and my opponent exchanged words in the language of the body. With my eyes, I was able to perceive and most of the time, predict the movements/words of my opponents. Movement has patterns, actions tell the past and the future. But all of these went down the drain when I went against a thunder breather for the first time. I was caught completely off guard due to the sheer speed at which Jigoro moved. It was like arguing with a rapper. I could see his future, I could predict him and I know how to reply as well, but my body was too slow to react. In the end, I find myself dead every single time. You saw me. Jigoro said from behind me, but I did not know because my eyes were fixated on the residual lighting which was the aftermath of his attack. Eventually, I turned towards him with wide eyes and an open mouth. That was way too fast. I said. If he was still that fast now, I could only imagine how much faster he would be in his prime. It was a humbling experience, to know that there were people other than Muzan who could pose such a great threat to me. I was sure that if he attacked me from behind, my head would roll off with ease. I would have no time to react. Stop acting surprised like I was the one who just did an impossible feat. Jigoro yelled and pointed his finger at me. I tilted my head. Your eyes followed me. How is that even possible? He said. That was the first form of thunder breathing and it was supposed to be the fastest form. I don't understand. If you know that my eyes followed you, it means that you can also see me while moving at such speed, right? I asked. No. Everything was over in an instant for me. But I have fought for more than 4 decades and I have performed the first form of thunder breathing thousands of times. The one I executed just now was different, I could feel your eyes on my body. It was a feeling I had never experienced before, he said with sweat falling off his face. Yeah, well. I scratched my cheek. I told you I have very special eyes. No, you said you have special eyes which allowed you to read people's lips even though you are deaf. You never told me anything about being able to see someone move at the speed of sound, he said. This changes a lot of things. No, this changes everything. Ha 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 ha, he said and started laughing. Should I be concerned that he was this happy in our first training session? Kid, I will turn you into the strongest thunder breath user in the history of demon slaying. Ha 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 ha. And so my training began after Jigoro demonstrated thunder breathing to me. 2 weeks later, perfect movement. It was the ability I gained after many years of constant training. It allows me to move my body perfectly, engaging only the necessary muscle group in my movement to conserve energy. Couples with motor skills so incredible that each move I made was with extreme precision. This skill allows me to change my movement midway like someone changing the meaning of a sentence even after already saying the first words of the sentence. Even though I had no superhuman strength like Gyomii or Mitsuri, I was able to accomplish feats of strength equal to them by having perfect control of my body and the force it generated. But thunder breathing was kind of opposite to that. You have to use every fiber of muscle in your leg to explode out in an instant. Utilize all your strength in one moment. That was the concept Jigoro gave me. To be completely honest, that was a stupid way to fight. It was also the major downside of thunder breathing. I could not stress enough how much injury that could cause. Even if you were not injured, your body would fatigue extremely quickly and you will find yourself unable to fight for long. In a battle of attrition, thunder breathing was the worst while water breathing was the best. That's what Jigoro told me. Honestly, the more I learned about water breathing, the more I wondered if I should have started out with water breathing. It seemed to match my style perfectly. Instead, I seemed to start from breathing styles completely opposite to my nature. Fire breathing and thunder breathing. It was fine though. They were both powerful breathing styles and my goal was to learn all of the 5 major breathing styles anyway, so we will get to water breathing soon. I would learn all of the 5 major breathing styles and finally create my own, taking the best out of every style and creating the ultimate breathing technique. That was the end goal. And I will ruin Muzan Kibutsuji's whole career with said style. Anyways, we are straying from the topic. Thunder breathing, although a direct contrast to my style of fighting, proved to be not so difficult to learn. It took me 2 times longer than learning flame breathing, but in the end, I think I was able to at least get the hang of all 6 forms. Learning the unique pattern of thunder breathing was not difficult with my eyes. I basically did the same thing I did with Rengoku. I copied the breathing patterns of Master Jigoro. The only thing I struggled with was the concept of thunder breathing itself, which contradicted my style of fighting. "Get ready," Jigoro said, and I nodded. I crouched down and lowered my center of gravity as much as I could. I folded the muscles on my legs and tensed them, ready to explode out like a spring. My head was tucked under to avoid air resistance as I took a deep breath. Blue lighting came alive around me and the air vibrated from the strength coursing through my legs. Thunder breathing, first form. Thunderclap and flash. It took me quite some time, but I finally understood the concept. Thunder breathing itself was based on the principle of impulse. The first form of thunder breathing was the best example of it. Impulse refers to the impact force exerted upon a surface in a specific amount of time. The lower the amount of time needed to deliver the force, the higher is the impact. Now imagine you push someone with 100 newtons of force slowly over a large period of time, they will probably not feel much. But if you push them with the same force within a millisecond, they will fall and you will likely break their ribs. In the same manner, with thunder breathing, you apply all of the force your leg can generate on the ground in a short amount of time. This allows you to explode out at incredible speed over a short distance. The keyword being a short distance, around 10 meters. If you want to go further, you will have to execute the technique more than once, which Zenitsu did in the series. Anyway, I pushed myself off the ground with all of the strength my leg could produce in the span of one fickle moment. I engaged every fiber of my muscles and perfect movement allowed me to accomplish such feat. Then I blitzed towards the stick Jigoro held on top of his head. The sound of my leg pushing me off the ground rumbled like thunder. In an instant, I cut the stick in half and appeared right behind him. I released steam for breath while I slowly sheathed the sword on the side of my waist. "Incredible," Jigoro whispers in awe. The first form of thunder breathing was the most important form. It encapsulates the very principle of thunder breathing, so if you master the first form, you master the rest of the forms. The power behind the rest of the forms also depend on how well you mastered the first form. "I am happy to hear that," I said with a twitching face because my legs felt like buckling and falling on the ground. They were fatigued beyond belief. And it was not just because of one attack either. I have been in constant training for over 2 weeks. "You mastered it," Jigoro said while looking at the bisected stick in his hand. Then he turned to look at me. "You mastered thunder breathing in 2 weeks. That is an incredible feat which I don't think I will ever see again in my life, he said, but ultimately, a smile crept up to his face. I am glad to have witnessed it, he said, and looked at the rising sun in the distance. I think if anyone is going to end this war and kill the Demon King, it will be you, Seiji, he said. I am truly glad to have been a part of it, he said as tears pooled in his eyes. I gave him a bow. Thank you for all your teachings, master, I said with sincerity. I could not hear my own voice, but I hoped my voice reflected my feeling. I have nothing more to teach you. From here on out, it is entirely up to you on how you will advance your skills, he said. Goodbye, young man, I guess this is where we part, Jigoro said with his back facing me as he walked away. The sun was slowly climbing towards the peak of the sky. He waved his hand as goodbye. Thank you for all you have done for me. I hope we meet again, Gramps, I yelled out, which was very out of character, but I had to because he was walking further and further away from me. Ha ha ha, no. Thank you, Seiji, he said and turned to face me again. The smile on his face matched the brightness of the sun above him. I could not point it out, but his smile was so much more brighter than when we first met. Thank you for giving this old man hope again, he said and started laughing. I got lost in thought. I see. So that's what it was. His smile had hope in them now. He never truly believed that the war between demons and humans would end soon, but after seeing my talents and training me for 2 weeks, that outlook has changed. Now he had genuine hope that it would be over soon. He believed that I would be the one to finally put an end to the demons. I inspired such hope in him. I felt my breath hitched while looking at his disappearing figure. Hope was such a powerful thing. It was hope that made me persist through the difficult times in my life. When I lost all of my family, my hearing, and when I was in a completely different world, hope was the only thing that drove me towards tomorrow. Hope that things will be better. Hope that I will find a family or love again. I hoped I would be happy again tomorrow, just as I was yesterday. That's why everyone keeps fighting every day, isn't it? Hope. I will create a better future for this world with my blade. I swear. Shinobu Kocho, Seiji's POV, total concentration breathing or constant breathing. It was when the user of a breathing style constantly used their technique to enhance their body at every moment. Be it night when they are sleeping, or day when they are eating. They practiced a constant purposeful breathing pattern which allowed them to stay superhuman. They heal better and they become stronger as well. There were few even amongst the Demon Slayer who could use this advanced technique. It required a powerful set of lungs which could only be achieved through hard training. I remember even Tanjiro, the main character, struggling with it in the beginning. But believe it or not, I never had trouble with constant breathing. In fact, I have been doing that since the beginning with my incomplete breathing. This was mainly because even though I never learned a breathing style, I trained my lungs from a young age since I knew how important they would be later on. Most of the time, I used my own breathing style, steroid breathing, as it enhanced all aspects of my body. Although it may not have forms, steroid breathing was the best when it came to constant breathing. But in the case of speed and traveling, the thunder breathing constant proved to be superior. My senses and aspects other than speed were not improved, but it made up for it with the sheer increase in speed. So with the help of thunder breathing, traveling proved to be much quicker and easier. That meant I was completing my missions even faster than before. While I trained for 2 weeks with Master Jigoro, I did not slack on my mission either and often used the demons as a dummy practice. This was why, right now after 9 days had passed since Jigoro left, I was already on my last mission to become a Hashira. I have killed a total of 49 demons. I said with a smile, after completing this mission, I will finally be promoted to the rank of Hashira. In total, it has been 47 days since I passed the final selection, which is roughly a month and a half. With that, I have broken Jiomiai and Michiro's record of becoming a Hashira in 2 months. To be honest, I was a little excited. I mean, who didn't love pushing ranks? The sun was slowly setting in the western horizon, its bright yellow light had turned into a warmer orange. The people finished up their work to get back home before dark while demons waited impatiently for the hunt to start. But as the demons hunt in the night, so do I. The mission I got this time was pretty straightforward. The mission was to slay a demon living in the Yaiba Valley. Many lower-ranked demon slayers had died trying to slay the demon, which was why they were giving the mission to someone they considered as strong as a Hashira. The demon was apparently bold enough to remain in the valley even after 3 attempts at slaying him. Which told me that the demon was pretty confident in his strength. I should expect a strong one. This would be fun. After a few hours of traveling, I reached the Yaiba Valley. It was a very narrow valley located in the middle of 2 mountains. The valley had thick vegetation and the Yaiba River ran through the mountains, providing a fresh water source for the plants and animals. However, due to its steep gorges and dangerous landscapes, the valley was isolated. Which puzzled me quite a bit. Why would a demon live here? There were no nearby humans on which it could feed. I stood at the top of a mountain and I looked down upon the land. It was dark, but my eyes easily pierced through the darkness as I searched for my prey like a hawk. But before I could locate my demon, my eyes caught something else, or should I say someone else. Is that? I asked myself while narrowing my eyes. Then I leapt off the mountain to fall into the valley. Raven pecked at my head in anger before she flew off my head. The wind rushed past my body as I descended into the valley. When I neared the ground, I used the tall trees to decrease my momentum and landed gracefully on the ground. I landed close to her. Little girl, why are you here? I asked the girl who caught my eye. It's dangerous, I said plainly while observing her. I was finally able to confirm my suspicion now that she was so close. She had dark black hair that faded to lavender at the end. Her eyes were hazy purple with no pupils, which made her eyes look like that of an insect. She wore a white and purple haori and she tied her hair into a bun while 2 strands framed her face. She had a small body, but with her youthful face, it made sense. Huh? Who are you calling a little kid? You look the same age as me. She said and turned to face me. I paused abruptly. Damn. She's pretty. I stared. I think I stared too much. What the fuck are you looking at, creep? Your eyes are creepy as hell. It's amazing how personality can drag down one's beauty. That wasn't a very nice thing to say, but understandable, I guess. For the record, I did not use X-ray vision. She had nothing worth peeking at yet as she was just a small girl. But she had potential. Pause. I am a demon slayer and I am on a mission to kill the demon living here. But who are you? I asked the girl. She seemed taken aback by my words, a demon slayer? She did not see a sword strapped on my waist, so I had to show her my odachi, which was sheathed on my back. Then I showed her my uniform under the haori. I see. She said, well, my name is Shinobu Kocho. I am a Tsuguko of the Flower Hashira and a medical expert. I was sent here in case you get injured. The valley is quite isolated, so the master wanted me to come here and give you medical help immediately if you need it. Wow. Talk about prodigal privilege. I assumed the higher UPS did not want to see a young talent like me die, so they sent her here to make sure I survived in case I suffered an injury in my mission. Since many lower-rank demon slayers have died, there was a chance of the demon being strong. And this mission was particularly dangerous because even if the injury I suffered after the fight was not fatal, it could have led to death since there was no nearby help. I understand, I said. If that is all, I will immediately get to hunting the demon, I said and disappeared. I see him. The demon. I ran towards the place where I saw movement and smelled the scent of a demon. I pulled out my sword and my heart roared in my chest, preparing for a fight. Debate of death, Seiji's POV, I'm scared of pretty girls. So I ran to the less scary being, which was the man-eating demon living in the Yaiba Valley. I swiftly ran through the thick forest while Raven flew overhead. The demon I was hunting put absolutely zero effort into hiding himself. I could sense his bloodlust so clearly that the logical conclusion was that he wanted people to find him. I could also see him. My eyes pierced through the thick vegetation and locked on his demonic form. I would say that he was awfully human-like for a demon. In just a few more minutes, I finally reached the demon. He wore a yellow haori with a white scarf on his neck. His clothes were neat and tidy, unlike most demons, which gave the impression that he was a human. But I knew for certain he was not. "Your time is up, demon. Your arrogance had led to your end," I said, my voice echoing in the small clearing I found myself in. "It led me to this place," I concluded in my mind when I saw the marks of previous battles in the surroundings. This was likely the place where he fought with the demon slayers that tried to slay him before me. The demon laughed. I could not see his face since he was turning his back on me, but I knew he was genuinely amused. "It is so convenient this way, I don't know why I haven't thought of this sooner. My prey delivered themselves to me and I do not even need to hunt them down," the demon said. It was hard to tell, but I could make it out from the movement of his throat. "You have it all wrong, Demon Slayer, it is you who rushed to his own end," he said, and finally turned to face me. He had the face of a young man with 3x scars on his forehead and cheeks. But the thing that instantly caught my attention was the kanji in his eyes. The number 4 in kanji, that was written on his left eye. Lower Moon 4. I muttered in surprise before I looked down to hide my face. "Oh, are you scared, Demon Slayer? You people have been a bother to my master, so he gave us all an order to kill as many demon slayers as possible. I have been staying in this valley, calling them with my presence so that I can slaughter the lots of you," he said, even though I never asked. "I'm sorry," the demon said with a crooked smile. Veins popped around his eyes and his human teeth turned sharp. His face abandoned all humanity and finally turned demonic. "Actually, I'm not sorry." Then he shot at me with a burst of speed. I finally looked up to meet his eyes and I pulled out my sword before swinging at him. His claws met the sharp edge of my blade with a spark of friction and he halted in midair. His body tried to overpower me, but with refined technique, I resisted. My usually stoic face scrunched up to show anger. Because at that moment, I was absolutely pissed, livid even. "Why? You just couldn't show your ugly face sooner," I said, and pivoted on my heels to deliver a back kick at the side of his body. Steroid breathing enhanced my physical strength and my kick broke his ribs and tore his liver. A small shockwave erupted and sent the demon flying to the side. I had every right to be angry at that moment. I had worked so hard to become a Hashira as fast as possible, which required me to either kill one of the 12 Kazuki or slay 50 demons. Since I did not know the location of the 12 Kazuki and because I was still not strong enough to take on the upper moons, I decided to become a Hashira by killing 50 demons. I nearly succeeded. I had slain a total of 49 demons and he was supposed to be the final demon. But he turned out to be one of the lower moons. If I had met him earlier, I would become a Hashira instantly without having to grind so hard. He just had to show up when his death would least benefit me. The feeling was exactly the same as that time in my past life where I studied the whole night for a test, only to find out the teacher was absent the next day. It's silly, I know, but goddamn was it frustrating. "You're pretty strong, that's a surprise. I guess they would send someone decent after the third time," the demon said, and a demonic smile split his face. "Blood demon art, velocity burst. That's new. I have never seen a demon use blood demon art like the." My eyes shone bright and opened wide in absolute shock. It was because somehow, the enemy who was at least 5 meters away from me had suddenly appeared in front of me, arms pulled back to deliver a punch. His eyes were demonic red and his smile was straight out of a nightmare. The wind caused by his sudden appearance blew my hair and dried my eyes, making me want to blink. I could predict movements perfectly. I knew the language of the body better than anyone, and my enemies spoke to me before they even made a single move. But what I couldn't see were spells, blood demon art. And the demon had just used some form of spell to appear in front of me. Time had slowed down to a crawl as my brain and eyes worked overtime to make up for the shock. I brought my sword up just in time to block his punch. I would block the hit and the demon's arm would be split in half since the sharp edge of my sword was shielding me. But then something happened again. A shockwave. A powerful shockwave erupted from his fist and the force sent me flying away like a ragdoll. I blinked and time resumed like normal. Everything happened in an instant. Asterisk boom. Asterisk I planted my feet on the ground and slid to a stop. I could not feel my arms properly. My eyes immediately fell upon the enemy and this time with all the seriousness in the world. All silly thoughts were cast aside and emotions were discarded. It was no time to joke around. The enemy was strong. He was easily the second strongest being I ever encountered. I could tell that much with a single exchange. So this is the power of a lower moon. I thought grimly and took a stance with my sword. Good, I like that face better, the demon said and chuckled before he shot at me once more. This time, I was ready so I could see everything that I missed before. He was fast. He was easily 3 times as fast as Jigoro, whom I had trouble keeping up with. How was the demon able to gain such speed with such minimal effort? My eyes revealed the truth to me and answered my question. Shockwave. The demon was able to create a shockwave on the bottom of his feet and from his hand, maybe even with other parts of his body, but his feet and hand were the only parts he used so far. A powerful shockwave strong enough to shatter the earth pushed him off. The speed at which he moved was so fast and sudden that his own body suffered internal injuries. Blocking was out of the option since the enemy could also create shockwaves with his hands, so I dodged the body which was coming at me like a meat cannon. But as the demon flew past me, I could tell from his body language that he had no intention of missing. Instead, he was readying his muscles to deliver another attack instantly. The twitch of his arm, the rotation of his hips and the side glance he gave me, all of these things told me of his next plan. I pivoted on my heel and leapt to the side and dodged the following attack before it even happened. Just as predicted, the demon exploded shockwave at his feet again and changed his trajectory. The sudden change in vector absolutely crushed his body, but he was a demon, he didn't care. But by the time the sequence of action was executed, I was no longer where I was supposed to be. The demon was forced to stop his attacks abruptly, his face told me he was surprised. I can still read him. That was strange, the demon said, but then shrugged his shoulder, thinking what I just did was luck or a fluke. He casually healed all of his muscle tears and internal injuries while cracking his neck. I also decided to get serious and I took a deep breath. Blue lighting sizzled as I inhaled and flames came out of my mouth while I exhaled. 2 of the 5 major breathing styles mingled inside my body. Fine, let's talk. And so, the debate of death starts. Slaying Lower Moon 4, Seiji's POV. Fine, let's talk. Let's not, the demon yelled and he exploded out towards me. He came at me with endless momentum, but this time, I was ready. Flame breathing, second form. I said as my eyes glowed bright and flames wrapped around my blade. Rising scorching Sunday. I swung my sword up in a perfect arc, like the sun rising to the sky. A trail of fire followed my blade. The sound of 2 consecutive shockwaves rang out, its vibration shaking the air itself. The demon produced shockwaves from his hands to stop his momentum and he halted right before my blade reached him. His rows of sharp teeth smiled at me as if he had predicted my attack perfectly and dodged in time. I bit down a smile. One thing you should never do when you fight me is try to out-predict me. It was a battle that assured defeat. So I changed the grip on my sword, holding the blade horizontally, and the pattern of my breath also changed abruptly yet seamlessly. Thunder breathing, second form. Lighting came alive around my body and my muscles tensed up, preparing to explode out with every fiber of strength at one moment. Rice spirit. I declared, and the following action exploded in one moment. My arm blurred and my blade became 5, slicing from different angles in one moment. That was the concept of the second form. It was to deliver 5 consecutive slashes at the enemy from different angles in one moment. The shocked demon did not even have time to react as I cleaved at his limbs one by one. I sliced off his left hand, and then his right arm. In less than a millisecond, I sliced off both of his feet as well. 4 slashes. With all his limbs cut off, he could not use his shockwave anymore. The last swing was aimed at his neck. But right before I decapitated the demon, he opened his mouth and a terrible shockwave shot at me. My head would have exploded in a gory mess it hit. So I stopped my swing midway and tilted my head to the side. The shockwave went right past my ear and left a dent on the ground. I had seen the way his throat contracted before the attack, so I had ample time to dodge. The shockwave also pushed the demon back and he escaped my range in an instant. But I was determined to capitalize on the opportunity. He let his guard down and it cost him 4 limbs. Now I had to cut off his head before he could regrow them. Thunder breathing, first form. Thunderclap and flash. Lightning wrapped around my body and I pushed myself off the ground at the speed of sound. A sonic boom shattered the ground and roared like thunder. I became something akin to a streak of lightning. The demon's face pinched together to paint a nasty expression of fear and anger. He focused all of his regenerative power into one hand and managed to use his shockwave to shoot himself up the sky. By the time I reached him, my blade could no longer slice his neck, but I bisected his body just below his armpits. My blade cut through his demonic flesh like a cake. But the moment was lost. The demon used his shockwave to propel himself high in the sky where I could no longer reach him. He healed his body in the safety of the sky. "You insignificant bug!" The demon roared in the sky, "I will kill you." Blood demon art, meteorite fall. The demon said, and just by the name, I could already guess what was about to happen. Words and actions spoke to me. The end of all 4 limbs exploded multiple times with shockwave and the demon shot down to the ground like a meteorite. I used thunder breathing to move away from my position quickly and the demon shattered the earth in his crash. A huge dust of smoke rose. My eyes pierced through the smoke and locked on the demon, who thought I would have trouble seeing. He launched himself at me again, his body cutting through the smoke at sonic speed while I gripped the handle of my sword and took in a huge gust of air. Blood demon art, shockwave dance, the demon yelled. Thunder breathing, first form. I replied to his action. It was an exchange of words, an exchange of meaning and violence. Thunderclap and flash. I said, and after careful analysis of my enemy, I determined the amount of move required. 12-fold. Our body moved at supersonic speed. Our image became a blur of flash and shockwave as we exchanged 12 consecutive attacks in a matter of seconds. We were equal in speed, but he was stronger and more durable. On the other hand, I could read him like a book and predict his moves. Then I replied in such a manner that nullified his superior strength and durability. The sound of our exchange was like thunder and explosion, bringing chaos to the thick forest. Animals fled while trees were uprooted due to the shockwave and due to being used as a foothold. We were equally matched. By the end of our clash, we were already miles away from the previous clearing where we fought. I felt my body ache due to the exhausting nature of thunder breathing. To attain victory, I needed to end this quickly. Although it might look like I was at a massive disadvantage right now since I was tired and my enemy was a demon who knew no injury or exhaustion, it was actually the opposite. The end for the demon drew near because through our exchanges I finally had a grasp of his fighting style. I was now familiar with the rhythm of his movement and the patterns of his attack. What attack did he prefer? Which angle is his favorite? Which part of my body did he always target? What are the timing of his attacks? How did he react to an opening? I had the answer to all of these questions. He told me himself through our battle. And now it was time to end this. I intentionally created an opening. It was a bait which I knew he would take without fail. He was desperate, angry, and humiliated. Die. It was oh so simple. I got him used to thunder breathing and its fast nature. So the sudden change in breathing style was more effective than it should be. Flame breathing, fifth form. I whispered as I fell from the sky. Our final clash took place high in the sky, so we both fell. But unlike me, who was seemingly helpless while mid-air, the demon could use his shockwave to maneuver in the air. That was the fake opening I created. I lied with my action, Flame Tiger. Flames encased the entirety of my body. Those flames wrapped and folded around me until it became the shape of a tiger. I sucked in huge volumes of air in my lungs and my body reached a supernatural temperature. I was in overheat. Flame breathing was not like thunder breathing. It was not fast, but it was explosive and it burned with intensity that was completely unmatched. My purple eyes bore down on the demon with disdain. Only a fool would run into flames. The flames around my body, which was in the shape of a tiger head, swallowed the demon and chomped down on him. The canines of the tiger were my blades and they chopped him up into pieces. Flame breathing was more effective than other breathing style due to its close relation with sun breathing, so even a slash to his body damaged him greatly. The demon let out a guttural scream. It was times like these when I wished I was not deaf. Was his scream as helpless as the screams of my family? Was it as sad as mine on that fateful night? I hope so. No. I made sure it was so. Boom. On that lonely night in the valley, at the young age of 13 and 11 months, I slew the lower moon 4 and became eligible to become a Hashira. Heaven and thighs, Seiji's POV, good talk. I said while sheathing the sword on my back. I might not suffer any visible cuts or injuries, but I was beyond tired and I was sore all over due to the shockwave that the demon threw at me like candies on Halloween. Definitely going to feel worse tomorrow. I thought while taking a closer look at my body. Although I did not kill the demon with one strike like Jude did in the anime, I was still happy with the strength I displayed against the lower moon demon. Now I had a clear picture of just how strong I was. I was probably strong enough to take on any lower moon, although the first and second may prove to be extremely difficult, and I was definitely at the level of Hashira. A Hashira who was on the weaker side, but a Hashira level nonetheless. I suppose if my body developed for a few more years, I would be able to fight against the likes of Upper Moon themselves, of course, excluding the top 3. Coupled with the improvement in skills and the breathing styles I would eventually learn and master, I would hopefully be even stronger than that. Raven flew down and landed on my head. A small smile tugged at my lips as I asked, "Did you see me, Raven? Was I cool?" She gave me an answer by tapping on my scalp. Indeed, I was pretty cool. Her words, not mine. My smile got wider at her answer. It was already great that I got to slay demons, but looking cool while doing it? That's double great. Raven tapped at my head with her small little feet again, telling me that someone was approaching me from behind, so I turned back. You really did it," Shinbu said as approached me. There was a hefty amount of surprise and awe on her face. "You killed the demon by yourself," she said and bit her lips. "Even though you are the same age as me." Then she carefully looked at me up and down before saying, "You're hurt." "No, I'm not," I said, and a small trail of blood flowed out of my mouth. I blinked and then took a detailed X-ray look at my own body. "Oh," was what came out of my mouth. I actually suffered quite the injury internally. I sat on the ground and Shinobu quickly ran up to me. I guess all of the shockwaves that hit my body, although not a direct hit, caused a lot of trauma internally. Coupled that with the overabuse of thunder breathing, this was the result. "Don't worry, I have some medicine that can help you," she said and rummaged through the small bag that she was carrying before she took out a few pills. "Here, this will stop the pain and this will stop the bleeding," she said and came close to me. Too close, too close. I panicked in my mind as she brought her pretty face near my face. As you would expect from someone like me, I was not good at dealing with the opposite gender my age. Especially if they were someone I find extremely attractive. I did not show that on my face though. Outside, I was stone cold. Your face is heating up, she said. I could feel the heat in her breath. She put her hand on my forehead to check my temperature. Is it a fever? Luckily, Raven came to my rescue as she shooed Shinobu away like a protective girlfriend. I took a deep breath and relaxed my body as much as I could. I'll be fine after some sleep, I said. The constant use of my eyes in such a high-intensity fight also caused mental fatigue. Although it was getting better, the main drawback of my eyes was always mental exhaustion, which caused me to need more sleep than normal. I laid down on the ground. Shinobu, can you stay with me for a few hours, thanks. And I was out cold. When you have eyes as good and as sensitive as mine, you learn to truly appreciate the beauty of the sun while also loathing its glaring rays. And this was one of those moments when I absolutely loathed the sun. The bright rays of the sun fell on my eyes and my lids were too thin to stop them completely. It woke me from my slumber and its unforgiving light made sure I never returned. Shit. It was uncomfortable since the rays were falling right on my face, yet I did not move a single muscle. I did not turn my head or cover my eyes to stop the brightness. Why? It was because of the soft, supple pillow I was sleeping on. They were not actually pillows, and if you've read as much as me, you would know instantly what they were. Thighs. No, you read that wrong. I didn't say heaven even though it's pretty close. I said thighs. Or maybe you're not wrong, because aren't they the same thing? Tomato, tomata and all that jazz. So as much as it was uncomfortable on my face, it was extreme comfort on the back of my head. And right now, the comfort eclipsed the discomfort. So let me stay like this for a while. No, fuck that, I should stay like this forever. Should I just die like this? You're awake. Shit. Don't move, she might just be saying stuff. I know you are awake. You're deaf, you're deaf. You're deaf. I can see you peeking, she said, and it was then that I realized indeed, I was looking up at her and reading her lips. I did not know when I opened my eyes, but I instinctively did, and now it was over. I can't get up. My back, it hurts. I said, and she stared at me with a dead face. There were no injuries on your spine or back. I checked, she said with a closed-eye smile. So it's really the end. I sighed and sat up. I cracked my bones and stretched my arms before standing up and checking my surroundings. We were still in the same place, the only difference was that Shinobu dragged my body someplace under a tree. How long was I asleep? I asked. 9 hours, she said. I felt bad instantly, sorry for the inconvenience. How long did I use you as a pillow? Oh, don't worry about that. I only let you rest on my lap after the sun had risen. You were talking in your sleep and seemed to be having a nightmare, you see, she said. You said something about demons robbing you of everything and something about your sister. Shinobu said. I could see a hint of pity on her face. As someone who loved her sister, she felt sympathetic. Is that why she was giving me a lap pillow? Well, thank God for my unresolved issue. Whoever said traumas were bad? Like all things in the universe, even trauma had good and bad. I laughed at my own thoughts while looking away from Shinobu. It never felt good as a man to see pity from a girl he finds attractive. Speaking of which, is it weird that I find her attractive? She's like 13, and although she was more developed and mature than girls in my past life, she was still not a woman. Is it because I never crossed the age of 13 in both lives? Or am I just Drake? And this was not like a physical attraction I felt for a random beauty I saw on the street. This was more like, oh, I can see us marrying and having kids kinda attraction. Whatever, let me shelf that feeling for a moment and say it's due to my budding teenage hormones. This world infested with demons was not a good place to fall in love. Especially with a character that I know is going to die in her pursuit of revenge. Love comes after I wiped the demons from the face of the earth, never to take my love again. you never told me your name. Shinobu said, bringing me out of my thoughts. Oh. I said, feeling a tad bit embarrassed at my mistake. Well, my name is Seiji Shirgan. Thank you for taking care of me. To the headquarters, Seiji's POV, well, my name is Seiji Shirgan. Thank you for taking care of me. I said, finally giving a proper introduction. She smiled, no worries. You barely had any injuries to begin with. It seems that it was due to fatigue or mental exhaustion that you passed out instead of an actual grave injury. Yeah, I feel much better now. I said. Shinobu was a kind girl. She was much bolder and straightforward than I initially expected, or at least how she was shown in the anime. She was still not that alluring Wani-san I remembered. Right now, she was simply a young girl of 13 years old. She was curious and showed lots of different emotions, but most of all, she was still very innocent. I could see this instantly from the way she spoke and from the way she behaved. My best guess was that her sister was still alive. She was yet to harbor endless hatred and pain in her heart. We had a short talk while we gathered up the supplies and the things Shinobu had taken out to treat me last night. Although she was not yet a demon slayer, she had already attained her genius in medicine. She asked me lots of questions due to her curious nature, which I appreciated because I could not keep a conversation. She asked me how the fight went, what my breathing style was, and how strong the demon was. I answered her as well as I could. So Seiji, what rank are you again? She asked. Hopefully after this fight, I will be a Hashira. I said, and she blinked. She turned to look at me, her face changing to different expressions because at first she thought I was joking. But then my face and the tone of my voice told her that I was serious. A Hashira? That would mean. I have already slain a total of 50 demons. I nodded. And the demon I fought last night was one of the lower moons. What? A lower moon? She asked in surprise. It was probably the first time in my life, but I was secretly happy to show off. But I kept it cool because a cool guy does not freak out while showing off. I acted like such feats were nothing, although secretly, I was extremely proud of my hard work and achievement. Yes, lower moon 4 to be exact. I see, no wonder, she said, and her odd eyes glazed in awe. I think she was impressed. You are like, super strong then. I rubbed my nose, I guess I am. Just then, a crow flew above our heads and started cawing. Raven immediately came down from the tree she was perching on and sat on top of my head. Caw. Caw. Seiji Shirgan, go to the Demon Slayer Corp headquarters. Caw. Caw. Seiji Shirgan, go to the Demon Slayer Corp headquarters. Caw. Caw. Seiji Shirgan, go to the Demon Slayer Corp headquarters. Well, I guess that's my promotion. I don't know where the Demon Slayer Corp headquarters is. I said, and the crow replied. Follow me. Follow me. Follow me. The crow flew away, trying to lead me to the headquarters. I did not move yet and looked at Shinobu with a smile. This seems to be where we part. I should return to the flower mansion as well. Shinobu said before standing up. It has been pleasant knowing you, Seiji, she bowed. The same goes for you, I hope we meet again, Shinobu. If you don't mind, you can visit the flower mansion anytime, she said and gave me a bright innocent smile. I am going to assume that she enjoyed my company as I did hers. I will keep that in mind. I said and then disappeared from my place. The crow flew ahead and I followed him right behind, chasing his tail. I have come a long way since the night I lost everything. But now, it was finally time to take another leap. Here I come. Third POV, Shinobu watched as the boy ran after the Kasagi crow. His destination was the Demon Slayer Corps headquarters, a place she herself had never visited even though her sister was a Hashira. She made an educated guess, Seiji was probably summoned there to affirm his rank a Hashira. It was still hard to wrap that fact around her head. A boy her age had not only killed 50 demons but he had successfully slayed a lower moon by himself. He was incredible. There was something special about him. His presence alone oddly calmed her heart, and the more she learned about him, the more she was drawn to him. For example, the fact that he was able to accomplish everything he did while being deaf. At first, she did not realize he was deaf, and she truly panicked when he didn't wake up no matter how much she called out to him. It was only when she did a thorough check of his body that she realized he was deaf. Speaking of checking his body, the image suddenly came to her mind, and with it, red came on her cheeks. Apparently, he had an extremely attractive body even at his age. His body looked more sculpted than natural. The ratio, the shape, and the amount of muscles and fats were just right. That was to be expected since Seiji built his body with the help of his eyes. As someone who loves beauty, Seiji built his body not only to be strong but to look good as well. And Shinobu was educated enough in human anatomy to appreciate his hard work. A deaf swordsman, she hummed. He reminded her of the strongest person she knew, the stone Hashira Jyomiai. Maybe he would grow up to be as strong as him. Whatever the case was, Shinbu felt an odd peace in her heart. With people like him fighting alongside the Demon Slayer Corps, maybe this war would finally end. Meeting him gave her a brighter hope for the future. Seiji being cool and stuff, perfect welcome. Seiji's POV, I followed the crow for half a day. It proved to be quite a fun challenge as it flew over rivers, mountains, and valleys while I had to do everything I could to catch up. But in the end, I never lost the crow, and right at noon, I reached the Demon Slayer Corps headquarters. This place is nice, I said while looking at the huge mansion and compound. The place was hidden between a range of mountains with barely any forest. The trees surrounding the place were all cut down. I assumed it was to get easier view of anyone who approached the headquarters. A demon would be spotted before he got too close. There were also many Kusagi crows who acted as security. There were walls surrounding the compound, and they perched on top of that. Raven flew off my head and decided to join her fellow Kusagi crows. I shrugged and entered the headquarters through the main gate. I head inside, and before long, I noticed 6 people who were kneeling down in front of a house from afar. My eyes could easily tell who they were, so I immediately went there. You are finally here, Seiji, we were waiting for you. I stopped when the master addressed me. Kagaya Ubuyashiki. He was sitting on the narrow wooden strip that ran along the Japanese traditional house that served as a transition between the interior and the compound. He was much younger than I remembered, and the scar on his face extended only to one eye. He looked quite healthy as well. But my eyes saw the true condition his body was in. He was very ugly. Like a demon. What are you doing, dumbass? Greet the master, screamed someone. It had no effect on me as I was deaf, but his angry body language made me do as I was told. I got on one knee and greeted Ubuyashiki. It's fine. I'm happy to see you, my boy, he said. I looked up and observed the 6 people who were also kneeling in front of Kagaya. Jyomiai, the stone Hashira. Kane, the flower Hashira. Ju, the water Hashira. Yuzui, the sound Hashira. Shinjuro, the flame Hashira and father of Rengoku. And finally, the person who just screamed at me. Sanemi, the wind Hashira. These people were the existing Hashira today. The first thing I noticed about them was the sheer aura of strength oozing off them. Just one glance and I could tell that no one was inferior to me. I guess things were quite different at the top. I'm getting excited. Okay, so now that everyone is here, shall we begin our meeting? It has been only 3 months since the last Hashira meeting, so you must all be confused why I had summoned you again. I'm sure you are curious. Ubuyashiki said. I could not hear his voice, but I assumed it must be quite lovely and charismatic because every single Hashira present listened very closely. We, the Demon Slayer Corps, finally gained a new pillar today, he said, and all of the Hashira were caught by surprise. They all turned to look at me. Allow me to introduce you to the new Hashira, Seiji Shirgan. Ubuyashiki said with a gentle smile that held unveiled wisdom. The Hashiras present eyed me up and down. I could feel their analytic eyes as they tried to gauge my strength. The more experienced ones like Shinjuro and Yuzui nodded, acknowledging my strength, while the young ones continued to be incredulous. Especially the weakest of the bunch. Him. Master, are you sure he is qualified? Sanemi asked while glaring holes at me. The guy got serious anger issues, but he looked fun. I am sure, Sanemi. If anything, Seiji here could not have been more qualified. After all, he succeeded in killing 50 demons while also slaying one of the lower moons. Ubuyashiki declared, eliciting gasps from them. The Wind Hashira shook in his place for a while before he looked up, eyes even angrier. I'm sorry, Master, but I don't believe that. Please grant me permission to test his strength. The others looked at him with wide eyes. They were surprised at how daring Sanemi was to say such things in front of their master. Does he mean to accuse the master of lying? Respect has always been a major virtue for Japanese people. So they all had ultimate respect to Ubuyashiki, who was their benefactor and their master. Especially since they were basically samurai and Ubuyashiki was their lord. Ubuyashiki had a small frown on his face. Sanemi, that was when I cut in, I accept. They all turned to me again. I accept his challenge to test my strength. Are you sure, Seiji, you just fought a lower moon last night? He asked me, his face concerned. Yes, it will be fine, Lord Ubuyashiki. I said and turned towards Sanemi with my eyes releasing a purple hue. Besides, I am not the only one who had a tough fight last night. I said. I could see fresh wounds, broken bones and a few other internal injuries on Sanemi. It seemed he had a tough fight just recently as well. But after hearing the summon, he came to the headquarters immediately. Huh? Why do you accept? Are you looking down on me, boy? Sanemi said, veins popped on his face to show his anger and agitation. He stood up and walked towards me with slow, intimidating steps. I could almost see fire and volcano behind him. He stood in front of me. He was around 2 years older, so he towered over me. While I stood at an impressive 5 feet 5 inches feet, he was 5 feet 10 inches feet. I said, are you looking down on me? He repeated as he towered over me. I ignored him and moved my head to the side. I gave a look to Ubuyashiki and after a while, he gave a helpless smile and nodded. Yes, so it is decided. I always wanted to fight against a Hashira. This will be a good time to test them, especially Sanemi, who was one of the strongest character in Demon Slayer. Let's see the level of my future allies. I can't let you get close. I said and pushed Sanemi as hard as I could. Perfect movement allowed me to push him with perfect technique so he fell on his butt. I created distance between us and I heard the sound of something cracking. Sanemi's face was stiff with anger and I saw steam coming out his nose. You bastard, he yelled and pulled out his katana. I replied to his action by pulling out my long sword, Odachi. Let's resolve this through talking. I said and Sanemi exploded out. His body easily cut through the air, as if the atmosphere was making way from him. Not a chance. Wind coated his body and he exploded out like a hurricane. Since he was only using constant breathing, I did the same. Steroid breathing. Power flowed through my muscle, boosting the overall performance of my body. Then my eyes read every little details about my opponent. I learned a lot from one attack, but one thing was certain, he was likely the weakest amongst the Hashiras present and I suspect that it wasn't even long since he became a Hashira. I swung my sword at him. Our swords clashed and created seppuks. I smiled, a perfect welcome does exist. Sanemi vs Seiji, Seiji's POV, here's an interesting fact. I was 10 times better at fighting humans than I was demons. If I were to fight against Yorichi or Muzan, I believe my chances of victory against Yorichi would be higher. This was because of 2 reasons. Firstly, it was because humans could not use spells and they could not manipulate their flesh on whims. This limitation of humans made my eyes extremely more effective against them compared to demons. And also because I have spent more than 5 years fighting against men. It was only recently that I learned to fight against demons. This was a direct effect of not having a demon slayer as a master. So as Sanemi rushed at me with his sword, I did not feel any pressure. My eyes saw him as less of a threat than the demon I fought last night. Our swords clashed and produced sparks. My muscles tensed at the weight of his raw strength. As someone who was older and hence bigger, he was physically stronger than me. But if someone looked closely, they would notice that I was overpowering him. You might ask how that was possible, and the answer lies in the difference between our techniques. To put it bluntly, I was in a completely different realm of mastery over the sword compared to him. In Kendo, we used wooden swords, so pushing against each other using our swords was one of the most important techniques. I knew exactly which muscles to engage and the location of the sword where I should apply my strength. Sanemi gritted his teeth as a new vein popped in his forehead. His eyes were bloodshot with anger and hatred for the world. He put more strength into his sword, reversing the situation as his overwhelming raw strength overpowered me. I revealed a small smile. Another thing I should mention is the difference in our swords. The katana is primarily used as one-handed sword in this world, while the odachi is a two-handed sword. So I calmly put my other hand on the hilt of my sword using 2 hands, and in an instant, I overwhelmed him. A small shockwave erupted and I pushed Sanemi back, sending him sliding away. "You bastard," he yelled and charged at me. But he was stopped on his track when the end of my blade suddenly found his neck. My sword was longer than his, meaning I could cut him into pieces where he could not. "Ha!" He roared and knocked down my sword and came charging at me again. I calmly took a single step back and pulled my sword. He tried to dodge my blade by ducking, but as if I could see the future, the tip of my blade was already near his neck again. He leapt back immediately to collect his thoughts. He did not charge at me afterwards and simply stared at me from a distance. He slowly walked around me like a predator sizing up his prey. I also walked away from my location, not underestimating him since he was a Hashira. We walked around each other in a circle. We didn't stay still because going from motion to motion was faster than going from being still to motion. His muscles tensed, and his grip on his sword tightened. There was also slight twitches in his quad muscles and his arms, but he never committed to an action. Each attack hesitated until they ultimately died down before even being executed. He started sweating while I smiled. He has excellent instincts. I thought to myself. He had attempted close to 100 attacks during the short time, but all have failed. He could feel instinctively that each attack would be met with failure. He found no openings in me, there was no way to approach and cut me down. Fighting me was like fighting against your own reflection. With the help of my eyes, I could read every twitch of your body and predict your attacks and movements. Then I would change my own posture and position to perfectly counter those attacks. The closest thing I could compare our current situation was 2 boys arguing in the park, trying to find out who could count bigger than the other. One boy said 1,000,000 and the other said 1,000,000 plus 1. Then again he said 1,000,000,000 and the other boy said 1,000,000,000 plus 1. 1,000,000,000,000 and 1,000,000,000,000 plus 1, a quadrillion and then a quadrillion plus 1, and so on. The point was that it was impossible to beat me in this game. No matter how well you plan, I would use those same plans against you. Like how the little boy used what was said to him and only added plus 1. I did not need to plan, I did not need to strategize. I would simply read you and then use your own plan against you. It must be truly frustrating to fight against me. I wish I never had such an unfortunate fate. Third POV, I've never seen anything like this before. Kane, the flower Hashira commented while gazing at the ongoing standstill. She may not be the one fighting, but her incredible eyes allowed her to decipher exactly what was going on. On the other hand, Jur remained silent and pondered on the similarity of Seiji's fighting style with water breathing. Seiji couldn't be a water-breathing user because Zhu would know, especially if he was strong enough to be a Hashira. So he wondered if Seiji had a breathing style that was derived from water breathing. That boy, Shinjiro said and narrowed his eyes, is quite dangerous. On the other hand, Yuzui merely shrugged. He was not as impressed as his fellow Hashiras were because in his opinion, it's not flashy at all. You. Sanemi said through gritted teeth, I'll kill you. Then he swung his sword at Seiji even though he was completely out of range. Seiji tilted his head in confusion, he predicted the movement but didn't know how to reply to this one. Is he stupid? Why did? Seiji's eyes widened and he leaned to the side, just in time to dodge the wind blade that cut strands of his hair. His eyes could see the movements of the air and even the vibration, but this attack caught him off guard due to how natural it was. It was like a breeze, natural and not man-made. Whoosh, that was the opening Sanemi had been searching for all this time. The moment he saw it, he took it and came at Seiji like the wind. Wind breathing, first form. He took in huge volumes of air and dashed towards Seiji. Dust whirlwind cutter. At least this time, Seiji was able to predict that he was going to use his breathing style. The expansion of his lungs, the increased flow of his blood and his heart which roared like an old engine coming to life were all indicators. Sanemi spoke. But then Sanemi disappeared from his eyes and instead, what came at him was a horizontal tornado. The wind wrapped around Sanemi and he violently blew forward like a whirlwind. All of the winds produced were as sharp as blades, ready to mince anything that crossed their path. Seiji's eyes locked on the wind Hashira as he came like a green blur of sheer speed and tornado. Flame breathing, fifth form. Air turned into flames as they entered his mouth. Flame tiger. His long sword was wrapped in flames, and a yellow aura clashed against violent green. Flame was not like the wind, it was not violent or rushed at the enemy to destroy them. Instead, a flame burned bright and hot in its place, ready to destroy anything that dared approach its flickering presence. The heat was a warning, growing more intense the closer you get. To charge into flames was to charge at certain death. Shinjiro dropped his folded arms and stepped forward in shock. His eyes lingered on Seiji as he executed the textbook perfect fifth form. It lacked the determination, rage and intensity but the movements were the epitome of excellence. Who is he? It was a question that stayed on his rarely sober mind. Sanemi appeared in front of Seiji, he swung his blade horizontally, sending wind blades from every direction. A green wave of energy wrapped around him and put him at the center of a tornado. Seiji on the other hand brought his sword in a high guard before performing a series of slashes that created the image of a fiery tiger that dashed towards the wind blades. A shockwave erupted as the two Hashiras met in another clash, this time they both utilized their breathing styles. The attacks nullified each other. Take this. Sanemi said, pushing through his limits and he swung his blade upwards. Seiji predicted it and took the best course of action. He blocked the blade and used his body weight to resist the upward force. But the swing was powerful enough to send him flying. It looked like a powerful wind had taken him to the sky. Wind breathing, fourth form. Sanemi yelled and his arm turned into blurs. He released multiple whirlwind slashes from below Seiji. Rising dust storm. The place was engulfed in dust, blocking the scene of what was happening. Green blades made of wind rushed at Seiji, it was unbelievable how sharp the wind could get. Flame breathing, fourth form, Seiji said calmly from above. Then he performed circular slashes that whizzed through the wind blades. Blooming flame undulation, he painted the image of a beautiful red flower while blocking every single wind blades that came at him. His movement was elegant and each stroke served a deep purpose, directed by his purple eyes that saw through the world. As if they were rivals by birth, the fourth forms of both breathing styles perfectly countered each other. Amidst the rising dust, the onlookers only heard the exchange of blows as yellow blade and green blade met in a flurry of attacks. After multiple exchanges, both Sanemi and Seiji emerged from the smoke at opposite directions. Their eyes were focused as they slid to a stop. Then they exploded out again. Wind breathing, first form. Sanemi turned into a tornado again. His form was wrapped around by a green swirling tube of violent energy and he burst forth like the wind. Dust whirlwind cutter. Seiji also grabbed the hilt of his sword with one hand and lowered his center of gravity. He closed his eyes, his greatest weapon, to focus and control his leg muscles. Then he burst forth with every strength in his body. His step was so loud that it sounded like thunder. The force shattered the ground and he turned into lightning. Thunder breathing, first form. Thunderclap and flash. No one expected the boy they thought was a flame-breathing user to pull out thunder breathing. But no one had time to react as the two Hashiras crossed paths and exchanged powerful **** BOM. Star. It happened in the span of 1 second. The two of them found themselves in the starting place of their opponent. Seiji sheathed his sword on his back before turning to look at Sanemi, who collapsed right after. His blade snapped in half and there was a wide cut on his chest. It was not deep but blood seeped out of the wound. The winner was clear. Seiji Shirgan. Becoming a Hashira, Seiji's POV, that shit was so cool. I mean, swinging a sword to kill demons was one thing, but having a spar like real samurai? That's another level of awesome. What kind of boy had not dreamt of having a cool sword fight? With my eyes, I was able to see the special effects of breathing styles as well, which made the experience even more awesome. For real, this was a cool anime type shit. If there are people watching me, please make a cool edit of that fight with those trending songs in the background and let the beat sync with our clash. That should be enough. I hope you are satisfied. I said. The tone of my voice was dead, as usual. Whatever it was I was feeling inside, I did not let it show. My outer appearance was stone cold because it was cool only as long as you didn't acknowledge it. That was the line between being cool and cringe. You. Sanemi said through gritted teeth, but he stopped when Ubuyashiki spoke. That is enough, Sanemi. He threw his head to the side and clicked his tongue, but otherwise, he obeyed the words of Ubuyashiki. The outcome was just as I expected, he said with a knowing smile. Seiji here is the national champion of kendo. He was hailed as a one-in-millennia genius and his swordsmanship is said to be unmatched. The Hashiras acknowledged his words and even Sanemi was forced to accept the fact. My swordsmanship was undoubtedly superior to his. Well, if there is no more opposition, let us officially welcome our new pillar, Ubuyashiki said. Seiji? I blinked, and when I noticed everyone's eyes on me I got down on one knee. Do you, Seiji Shirgan, accept the title of Hashira and promise to become a pillar that supports the Demon Slayer Corps? He asked me with a fond smile. Yes. The title of Hashira is proof of your strength. Do you, Seiji Shirgan, promise to use your strength to protect the weak? Yes. Then rise, Hashira, he said, and I rose. Stand firm on your beliefs and never falter like an unshakable pillar. From now on, slay the demons in front of you not only out of hatred but also to protect the people behind you, he said. The title of a Hashira comes with heavy responsibilities. But I know you will do well to carry them, my dear boy, he finished with a proud smile that reminded me of my father. That is all for now, I will give you time to get to know each other. And Seiji, please meet me after you are done. Ubuyashiki said weakly before he disappeared into the house. Now that left all of the Hashiras in the courtyard. The situation reminds me of when parents leave their children who never knew each other before in a room and tell them to play with each other. The rest of the Hashiras started talking amongst each other. Yuzui approached Jyomiai with a friendly smile before they engaged in some kind of gossip. Ju went to Sanemi but the Wind Hashira yelled at him to leave him alone. Ju was yelled at and ignored, but before things escalated, Kane got in the middle of the two. Saname behaved like a well-mannered kid in front of her. And that left me with the only remaining Hashira and the one I least wanted to interact with. Tell me, kid, where did you learn flame breathing? It is Shinjuro Rengoku, the Flame Hashira. But I know him as the asshole father in my mind. I immediately did not like him just because I was friends with his son. Your son taught me. Kyojiro? He asked, his face showed surprise. You know him? Yes, I do. I said. We participated in the same final selection, which is where we first met. He taught me the flame-breathing style while I taught him swordsmanship. I see. He said and looked down, so you are telling me that you learned flame breathing only recently and you are already that good with it? Yes. Some people really are born with unparalleled talents people like us can't hope to match no matter how hard we work, he said with dry chuckles. Yeah, I did not like him. He stayed silent and took a swig of alcohol from the gourd he had at his side. But then I saw something flash in his eyes and his next words came out hesitant. So, how is Kyojiro? It started off low but with each question asked, it grew expectant. How is he compared to you? How did he do in the final selection? What is he like when fighting a demon? I did not answer instantly. My eyes carefully observed his face, trying to read his emotions, and I was only met with genuine curiosity. So I replied genuinely. He is incredible. My voice didn't falter because it was the truth. I wish my spirit could burn half as fiercely as his. Unexpectedly, Shinjuro laughed. It was a genuine laugh that came from irrepressible joy. You jest, he said, but my eyes could not ignore the pride on his face, pride for his son. Be careful in your missions, kid. We don't want to lose a talent like you, he said with a tap on my shoulder before he took another swig of his alcohol and walked past me. That was weird. I looked at the back of the veteran Shira. He was just a broken man barely held together by his sense of duty. But at one point, he used to be the strongest of his era. Maybe, I was wrong in my judgment. After Shinjuro was gone, the other Hashiras came up to me one by one to introduce themselves. It was quite the experience meeting people whom I once thought of as a fictional character. Since it was our first time meeting, there was not much interaction. They said their names, their title, and how they looked forward to working together with me. I imagined this is what it would feel like when there was a new worker in the office. But amongst all of them, one Hashira in particular stood out to me. And surprisingly, it was not the flower Hashira. It was Jyomiai Himejima, the stone pillar. It's a pleasure to feel your presence, he said in a voice I imagined to be as firm as a boulder. He was absolutely stunning. And I swear I'm not gay. He was easily the strongest Hashira, heck he might be the strongest human alive. His body was a sculpture, a masterpiece created by the greatest mason. Thick fibers of muscle wrapped around his gigantic skeletal frame. His muscles are far more than mortal flesh. If gods were real, they would be made of the same thing as Jyomiai was. Even demons did not have the monstrous physique that he had. Even Muzan himself could not compare to the sheer raw power emanating from his body. A god of war. If Rengoku's body was bred to fight, Jyomiai was built to demolish everything that stood in his way. Normally, I would find such a monstrosity ugly, but there was a weird beauty in him. It was the charm of the pinnacle of strength. White eyes, blind and unseeing, stared down at me. I felt like those eyes saw more than normal eyes could ever see. I could feel his gaze into my soul. If you need any help, be sure to come to me, he said before he walked away, all 8 feet of him. After all the introductions were done, I headed into the traditional Japanese house to meet Abuyashiki. The moment I entered, I found him lying down on a futon and Lady Amain was beside him. The thing Abuyashiki wanted to talk about was regarding last night. He wanted to know in detail about the 4th lower moon demon since the 12 Kazuki were the strongest demon. I briefed him about how the battle went, the strength of the demon, and the abilities he possessed. I also informed him about what the demon said to me. Muzan Kibutsuji was giving orders to the 12 Kazuki to kill as many demon slayers as possible. He promised his blood as a reward to the demon who did a good job. That would explain the sudden loss of my children. We had more causality in the past 2 weeks than we ever did in a month, he said. The spike in his blood pressure displayed his grief. Then he asked me an unexpected question. It was regarding my encounter with Muzan in Tokyo. I was surprised he even knew about it since I did not make a report. He said it was good that Muzan was blending with the humans instead of committing genocide. But he still thinks that we are not ready to face him yet, so he has done nothing to provoke him. He said the information they got because of me was invaluable, and so was my ability to see through his disguise. When he asked me what I thought of the Demon King, I said, even if all of the Hashriyas here fought against him at once, we would only be slaughtered like pigs. The Demon King has power beyond your expectation, I said. Ubuyashiki showed a mirthless smile. So we really stand no chance. Give me 5 years, I said after a long stretch of silence. He looked towards me, his face colored in surprise. After 5 more years, I promise to be strong enough to slay the Demon King, I said, my heart resolute, and I hoped my voice reflected it. Ubuyashiki simply stared at me for a while before he burst out in a chuckle. But there was no ridicule or amusement in his laugh. Those are strange words coming from someone who was shaking just by mentioning Muzan's name, he said. Was I trembling while talking about Muzan? But, he said and smiled, it's strange that I believe your words. You have a unique soul, Seiji, one that is capable of inspiring hope in the people around you. He said, did you know that Jigoro sent me letters after years of isolating himself from the Demon Corp? He had been in a downward spiral since he lost his leg, but meeting you had given him a brighter hope for the future. All he could talk about in his letter was you. Never lose that part of yourself in the long journey that awaits you. Please keep on fighting against the evil demons as the pillar of hope. Ubuyashiki said. He really had a way of charming people with his words. I could see why he was so respected even by the strongest people in the world. After our discussion ended, I headed towards the exit to leave, but he said one final thing to me. Oh, and happy birthday, Seiji. I paused. Did I get that right? Was it my birthday? I wouldn't know because I never celebrated my birthday since my parents died. The birthday celebration was also not a huge thing in Japan yet. Thank you, I said and left. And so, at the age of 14, I became a Hashira of the Demon Slayer Corp at recorded time. Rest, Seiji's POV, oh, you're done already. A face without flaw was a rare find when you have eyes like mine, and she was one of those rare finds. Even the parts you thought were flawed, when they came together on her, they made a very pretty face. She was beautiful. She greatly resembled Shinobu from the anime, except she had different eyes and she was taller. Her mannerisms and behavior were also similar. She was hot, in an Wani-san kinda way, if you know what I mean. And also, she's going to die. Excuse me? Kane said. Shit, did I say that out loud? Sorry. It's nothing, I said before whispering, I won't let it happen anyway. The whole point of my existence was to change destiny for the better. The story of Demon Slayer won't end as tragically as it did, and I won't let everyone die. That's one of the reasons why I fight to create a better and brighter future. Can I help you with something? I asked Kane. There was no one else in the compound as all of the Hashiras had left to continue their missions. Well, everyone left except for Kane, who for some reason was waiting for me. She giggled softly, no, not me. It's you that needs help. She then walked towards me much to my nervousness, and only stopped with an inch separating us. She was so close that I could feel the aura of beauty and sexiness from her. She was 5 feet 6 inches tall, and that meant she was taller than me. She simply smiled, not only with her lips but somehow with her eyes. She was expecting me to say something, to ask for help, I'd assume. But what came out was far more honest. Step on me. That threw her for a loop. It was a bit perverse of me, but honestly, who could blame me? She was a beautiful Wani-san and she was taller than me. Many people paid for these types of things and I was just asking, no harm done. I'm not a simp. Besides, she won't get it anyway. You need medical attention as soon as possible, she said, shrugging off the nonsense I have been spewing till now. What she said was true. I might act fine, but in reality, I couldn't be further from being okay. I still had internal injuries from last night and my fight with Sanemi definitely did not help either. How did you know? Well, first of all, I am a doctor, she said, and I have a special set of eyes you see, just like you. I stared into her pale violet eyes. They shone with a dim magical light and the pattern in her eyes almost resembled a flower. I remembered that flower breathing had a lot to do with the eyes of the user. The final form of flower breathing even enhanced the user's vision so that they could see the world in slow motion. So in a way, there was indeed a similarity between us. What I was born with, she achieved a fraction of it through her breathing style. That makes me wonder how effective the flower breathing would be coupled with my eyes. I want you to follow me back to the flower mansion so that I can give you treatment, she said, but her body language and the way she phrased it made it seem like I didn't have a choice. She seemed to be the type to take her profession seriously, not allowing to see people hurt without lending help, as a perfect doctor would do. Regardless, why in the world would I refuse? I'd be very thankful, Lady Kane. I said with a bow. Please don't call me that, just Kane would do. We are colleagues after all. I'll keep that in mind, Kane. Well then, let's leave immediately. She said with a smile. It seemed I would fulfill the promise I made to Shinbu sooner than expected. I'm sure she won't expect to see me again so soon. Kane and I left the Demon Slayer Corps headquarters and headed towards the Flower Mansion. The place was not that far away from the headquarters. It took us only a few hours to reach the mansion. If I had to guess the distance between them, it was only around 25 kilometers at most. The Flower Mansion, unlike the headquarters, was hidden inside the thick vegetation of the mountains. The computed itself was also smaller, but the mansion was bigger. The place had a very peaceful and calming vibe to it, perfect for recovering patients. My eyes pierced through the walls of the mansion and I noticed many injured demon slayers inside. I guess the mansion was like a hospital of sorts for the Demon Slayer Corporation. The workers greeted her warmly, with smiles and respect, as we entered the compound. Kane led me to the patient room of the mansion where she herself immediately gave me treatment. Most of my injuries were internal, so I was given pills and medical herbs to help my recovery. She also applied ointments on my arms which were apparently fractured before she wrapped them up in bandages. She was extremely professional while she worked, prompting me to not strike up a conversation, which was not really an issue since I wouldn't be able to start a conversation anyway. After all the treatments were done, Kane told me to rest on the bed and she advised me not to be in action for a few days. I had no problem with that. I had been constantly fighting due to my speedrunning, but since I finally accomplished my goal, I think I deserve rest. Although I would like to go around the compound and search for Shinobu, I put the task for my future self. Right now, I just want to sleep and rest. And so I did. Third POV, the chapter was short but it ended with a satisfying conclusion without any cliffhanger. It would be awkward to add more content to the chapter, but it is still way shorter than the average chapter. So let us take this chance to see how people thought of our boy Seiji. 1. Ubuyashiki Kagaya. He thinks Seiji Shirgan is a boy with a good heart who was greatly wronged by the world. His story and his disability reminded him of Jyomiai, and he also believed that Seiji has the potential to be as strong as the stone Hashira, if not more. He had been keeping eyes on Seiji since he became popular as a kendo prodigy because Ubuyashiki was madly on a lookout for talents. So he also knows about his incredible feats. The fact that Seiji was able to master breathing styles in a matter of weeks made him think that they might be seeing the second coming of a genius like Yorichi. If Seiji was not going to join the Demon Slayer Corp on his own, Ubuyashiki thought of inviting the talented swordsman after he had grown up. He knew about how his parents were killed by demons as well. 2. Shinjuro Rengoku. He is jealous of geniuses such as Seiji Shirgan. He thought that maybe if he was as talented as them, he could have saved so many more people. But overall, he had a good impression of Seiji since he was friends with his son Kyojiro Rengoku. He wished to see these two boys lead the Demon Slayer Corps in the future. 3. Gyomii Himejima. He is saddened to see yet another young boy becoming a demon slayer. He thinks it is his job to protect everyone, especially children, and he wishes to create a world where kids do not have to fight. He acknowledged Seiji's talent and strength. He was the only person amongst the Hashira to realize just how special Seiji was. Gyomii noticed immediately the perfect movements Seiji had. His presence was unlike anything he had ever felt before. It reminded him of the vibrations of rhythmic music. 4. Ju Tomioka. He doesn't really care much, but he admires real Hashiras like Seiji. He is greatly impressed by Seiji's fighting style and thought of inviting him to learn water breathing if he truly is able to learn multiple breathings. Maybe the Demon Slayer Corp would finally have a worthy water Hashira then. Seeing someone nearly 3 years younger than him be that strong and reaching Hashira inspired him to train harder again and made him realize he couldn't slack off while he held on to the title of Hashira. 5. Yuzui Tengen. He likes it better when Seiji used thunder breathing because it is flashier. He is impressed by Seiji's speed. But other than that, he thinks Seiji has darkness in his heart. He seems to have quite a lot of unresolved issues and he was running away from the past by rushing to the future, kinda like what he was doing. He thinks it's too bad Seiji did not have 3 amazing wives to help him like he did. 6. Kane Kocho sees him as a younger brother since he was around the same age as her sister. It was too soon to judge him yet, but she thinks he had guts to be able to endure injuries like he did. She was quite shocked to learn that he was deaf and wanted to know how he managed to live so normally and even become a great warrior with such a handicap. She wondered if she should teach him flower breathing due to his enhanced eyes, but also thought that it might not suit him since he would lack the lightness and flexibility of a female body. 7. Sanemi Shinazugawa. He really doesn't like the dude. Seiji reminds him of Jewel with his calm demeanor and his aloof attitude as if he was above the rest of the world. He doesn't think he could trust someone so stoic. But he respects Seiji's talent and strength but also wants to beat him and humble him. Future plans. Seiji's POV. The only drawback my eyes had was mental exhaustion. This was completely reasonable because seeing so many things in detail and many others that normal eyes were never meant to see, any human brain would be overloaded with information. When I was young, I would have to sleep at least 12 hours to deal with the mental exhaustion. But as time went on, the requirements became less and less. Still, surviving on barely 5 hours of sleep a day would be harmful to any human body, much less a body that has special eyes such as mine, which was exactly what I had been doing in the past 2 months. I forced myself to fight and work with only 5 hours of sleep every day. And clearly it had taken a toll on me because right now, I felt incredible. I did not know how long I slept, but I felt so amazing and good that I hadn't even opened my eyes yet. In a world of complete silence, deep sleep was guaranteed. And even though I had woken up, as long as I did not open my eyes, the world was completely silent and still. It was a great time to have an internal monologue. The question is, how do I plan to move forward from now? What was the plan? What was the next goal? I had become a Hashira and I now held the most influence and power a demon slayer could get. So, what's next? Killing Muzan Kibutsuji was the main goal, but thinking about that time when I encountered him in Tokyo, I knew that it was still too far away to even consider. I should at least be the strongest Hashira alive first to even think of slaying Muzan. In the story of Demon Slayer, the Hashiras, even the strongest, were merely cannon fodders to the Demon King. It was only through sheer continuous luck, plot armor, tricks and heavy sacrifice that they finally put down Muzan Kibutsuji. I wanted to kill Muzan Kibutsuji without any sacrifice, and I was not the main character with plot armor. That meant I would have to be strong enough to match Muzan at the very least, which I should mention, no one other than Yorichi ever accomplished. Yeah, it is not realistic yet. So let's start with something more realistic and doable. I promised to be as strong as Muzan in 5 years, a promise that became more and more ridiculous with each passing thought. So what can I do to achieve it? Or what can I do to at least get closer to the goal? The first thing that came to mind was learning all of the breathing styles that exist. I was now a Hashira, meaning my colleagues were the best breath users in the present day. I could definitely learn fire breathing from them. It took me a week to learn flame breathing and 2 weeks to learn thunder breathing. If those feats were used as a base, it shouldn't take me long to learn every breathing styles. After that, I could work on mastering each and every one of them. I should aim to become as proficient at using each unique breath as their respective Hashira users. I think that is completely realistic. In fact, it would take me less than 5 years to accomplish it, which is where the canon starts. Speaking of canon stories, you can be sure that I would do everything in my power to not let that happen. I won't let Tanjiro's family be slaughtered like how it happened in the story. This goal was also personal. If you really thought about it, my backstory was eerily similar to Tanjiro's. Both of us came home after a hard day of work only to be greeted by blood and the cold corpses of everyone we ever loved. A demon had killed our world while we were away. The similarity did not end there as we witnessed tragedy befall our sisters. I was robbed of my hearing and he was robbed of his sister's humanity. I couldn't save my own family back then, I was not strong enough. But goddamn, I will make sure the same thing doesn't happen twice. Maybe I would finally get a bit of solace like how Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man did when he saved a different version of MJ. So yeah, it was personal. And beside it being a personal endeavor, there were many positive fruits that could come out of it. Firstly, I could learn Hitokami Kagura, which is basically a watered-down version of sun breathing. Secondly, I could learn the location of the blue spider lily from Tanjiro's mother. For those who don't know, the blue spider lily is said to have the power to give demons the ability to walk under the sun and be resistant to the Nichiren blade. Muzan had been searching for it for centuries and the demons were created with the objective of finding the blue spider lily for him. There were also many other things like the possibility of saving Tanjiro's father and convincing the absolutely broken character to join the Demon Slayer Corps, etc. The only problem was that I had no idea where Tanjiro's house was located. The only thing I remembered was that he used to sell charcoal in a village near their isolated home. I have no other clue. But then again, Japan was a small island, how hard could it be to find one home? And what else is there? It had been on my mind for quite a while, but I could try asking for a bow and Nichiren-tipped arrows. The smiths of the Demon Slayer Corps should be able to create one and hopefully, they would respect the request of a Hashira. I wanted to know how my eyes would affect marksmanship. Maybe I could develop a new breathing style for marksmanship. Who knows, I definitely won't if I don't try, so I was going to try. My world, ever so still and silent, was disturbed by vibrations felt by my skin. It was a tug of reality that threatened to bring me out of my musing. More aware of my surroundings than ever, I felt someone inch ever closer to my skin. I could feel their body heat as they got closer. I held my breath, I knew I was safe and no harm would befall me, yet my body was ready to fight. But then, a small head landed on top of my chest. I could not hear, I did not see, but I could feel their ear on my chest. They were listening to my heartbeat and strangely enough, that made me listen to my own heartbeat with them. Thupped up, 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 my heart beats firm and consistent. Finally, I opened my eyes to see whose head was on my chest. The moment I saw who it was, I felt my heart stop beating. It was an old man. What the actual fuck? I yelled and quickly pushed the old man with a creepy smile off my chest. It was unlike me to raise my voice, much less straight out yell, but the situation deserved it. I was truly shocked out of my mind. What do you think you're doing? I asked. I was checking if you were still alive or if you had problems. Lady Kane told me to check every 6 hours, the old man said. That's reasonable. Why was I so shook anyways? And why do I feel a gigantic sense of disappointment wash over my entire soul? Well, the answer was obvious. I was expecting him to be Lady Kane or even Shinobu, but I guess I was wrong. I really shouldn't get my hopes high just because I woke up on the lap of a beautiful girl once. That was embarrassing. I noticed movement on my side, so I looked towards the window to see Shinobu peeking in like a kitten. A playful smirk danced on her lips and her eyes glazed with mischief. Yes, it was, she said. God, why did I say that out loud? Thank you for keeping an eye on him, Shinobu said with a smile. The old man bowed and went away right after. I stared at Shinobu, and not because of any particular reason other than just being fond of seeing her face. So, you finally decided to wake up after 2 days of sleeping? She asked. It's good to see you again, I said. Same to you, I didn't expect to see you again so soon, she said, and then threw a sword at me. I effortlessly caught the sword with a puzzled look. Why don't you stretch those tight muscles and give me some tips, Hashira, she said. A nice sweat before a bath is always good. It was weird that she asked me for such things right after waking up. Literally, no one does that, at least say good morning first. But sometimes, eyes can tell you more than words. From the eagerness in her eyes and the way she peeked at the window as if she had done it multiple times, I could tell that she had been waiting for me to wake up for a while now. Likely to talk to me because she wanted to ask me for advice. There was also a competitive glint in her eyes. I saw a girl who was motivated to try her best and live up to what she believed was her sister's expectation. She was honest and would go for what she wanted without hesitation like a child. Sure, I said and cracked my neck. She was right, my body was indeed tight and full of knots. Her smile widened and she moved away from the window right as I leapt out from it. I remembered the pattern of wind breathing during my fight with Sanemi, so this would be a good time to try those out. I was feeling refreshed and a bit weaker due to an empty stomach. But I immediately shot towards Shinobu with the sword. Destined to never win, Seiji's POV, what were you thinking inviting him to a spar immediately after he woke up? He is our guest Shinobu, at least feed him first. I ate a bowl of rice while watching Kane reprimand her sister. Shinobu had an awkward smile on her face, trying to come up with excuses but finding none. Didn't I also tell you that he needed rest for at least 4 days to heal completely? I know. Sorry, I got carried away because I was excited, she said. It was the worst excuse ever, but I liked the honesty. Besides, sparring with me would not even be considered an activity to him. He beats me as easy as he breathes, right Seiji? Shinobu asked and turned to me. Sure. It was literally true. She huffed, as if she was finally out of the case because I sided with her. Kane grabbed her own face and sighed before turning to me. How's the food, Seiji? It's good. I'm glad to hear that. I am confident in making healthy food but not tasty food. It's good if you like it, she said and smiled. And sorry if my sister was bothering you. Hey. I was not bothering him, we're friends. Were we? I was not sure if people became friends that easily. But then again, the same thing happened with Rengoku. That means now I have 2 friends, a boy and a girl. That's 2 more than what I thought I'd ever have. The sisters were fun to watch, it was crystal clear that they loved each other and got along just from seeing their interaction. Even the way they argued was straight out of the writer's mind when he imagined a perfect sibling relationship. I invited them to eat with me, and since neither of them had breakfast yet, they agreed to join. The 3 of us ate our food on the engawa, which was the Japanese version of the porch, while gazing out at the garden. The flower mansion was a serene place meant for healing. The place was filled with good scented flowers and a small artificial stream fed the garden. Its beauty and peace was what allowed many patients to heal faster. We had small talks where the sister asked where I came from, and if I had any remaining families alive. Yes, they legit asked me if I had any families alive because it was so common amongst demon slayers to have their families killed by a demon. It was basically the canon event for most demon slayers, and it was why they became who they were in the first place. No one wanted to make a living by killing demons unless they had a thirst for vengeance or deep hatred towards demons, unless, of course, it's your family tradition like Rengoku. Heck, being a solitaire was safer and better than being a demon slayer. I told them I had an aunt and uncle back in my village who adopted me, but my parents and siblings were all killed by a demon when I was young. They also told me about their past and how their family was slaughtered by a demon with only the two of them being survivors. They said it was Gyomii who saved them just in time before the demon could get to them. We got lucky because we still have each other after we lost everything. But I couldn't even imagine what it would be like, to lose your parents, brother and sister. Kane said softly. I could see the pity in her eyes, and if I was being honest, I didn't like it. It's fine, you get used to it. I lied, you never got used to it. You can't. Losing people you love is like losing a limb or losing your hearing, you lose a part of yourself forever, and you are no longer complete. You never got used to it, you just learned to move forward in your incomplete self. Time heals all wounds. I said again. It will heal me too. Then the conversation shifted towards something fun and lighthearted. They told me stories about theater training and how Kene became a Hashira. It was mostly just Shinobu who talked about how Kene became a Hashira. From the way she talked about her sister, I could see the deep admiration she had for her. After we finished the food, Kane gave me another checkup on my condition, and even though I could see the condition of my body perfectly with my eyes, it was nice to hear the analysis of a professional. I spent the rest of the day lazing around and practicing the patterns of wind breathing whenever I felt like it. Actually, it did not end there. I spent the next 2 days doing nothing but resting and practicing the different breathing styles. Kane was a busy Hashira, but she managed to share breakfast with us every day. On the other hand, Shinobu was perpetually at the flower mansion and taking care of the patients. She would also train to become a demon slayer whenever she could. She was going to participate in the final selection next year, so she was preparing for that. My relationship with the two sisters grew a lot during the 2 days, especially with Shinobu. As two teenagers of similar age, our topics of interest aligned and there was a special chemistry between us. Shinobu was very different from what I remembered in the anime. In fact, Kane resembled Shinobu in the anime more than she did. One of the main topics we would talk about was books and stories. Apparently, Shinobu was quite fond of stories, especially that of horror or ghost stories. I also liked stories and reading in general, having read many books in my past life. I liked reading different books so much that I learned how to read in 12 different languages. I would often tell stories I remembered from my past life to her. She thought I came up with them and she had termed me as a genius in her mind. Other than that, I was helping around the mansion any way I could, which mostly consisted of helping the patients with broken bones, which was very common. With my eyes, I was easily able to fix dislocated shoulders or joints and also help in aligning broken bones so that they healed faster. But after 2 days had passed, I was finally allowed to be in action again. And my peaceful life came to an end. It was short but sweet. The first thing I did after being told I could fight again was as anyone would have expected. Let's have a match between us, Kane. I said. It has not even been 1 second. She blinked. Well, I have been staying stagnant for too long. I needed to continue my journey towards strength, and what better way than challenging strong opponents? I have also been curious about flower breathing, so I really wanted to see it in action. I guess it can't be helped, she said, and we went out to the yard to have a match. 15 minutes later, it's impossible. I lay upon the grass like a leaf in autumn. My gaze was focused on the blue sky and the smoky cloud, yet the endless expanse of blue could not push away the image in my mind. I think what I saw was imprinted on my mind. I can never win against her. Heck, I can't even fight against her. The weight of the words fell on my chest, knocking air out of my lungs. My body felt hot and my brain did not have sufficient blood to process complicated thoughts. All of the blood in my body was rushing to somewhere else. So, here's what happened. After the fight started, I was struck with a frightening realization. My style of fighting required me to look at my opponent's body muscles, blood flow, joint movement etc. to predict their attacks and reply to their actions. To do this, I used my X-ray vision. And what do you think happened when I finally used an X-ray on a beautiful girl like Kane? Yeah, it would not be wrong to say I fought two battles at once. My mind could not focus on the fight at all as it was always distracted by other thoughts. My action was a mix of fighting and trying to hide my hard member. It was impossible. I was, by no means a degenerate. I did not react in such ways even when I peek at other beautiful women. So even though Kane was by far the most attractive girl I met, I was doing fine just seeing her naked body. But when Kane started fighting, it was a different matter. Flower breathing required elegant movement and flexibility, so it almost looked like she was dancing. And when she danced, they danced too. With sweat covering her body, it was too much to take. It was too sensual. I might have superhuman strength, but I was just a teenager. It was a battle I was never meant to win. How embarrassing. I said in absolute defeat. Today, I realized a new fatal weakness of mine, and honestly, I was not sure how to overcome this. I could only hope that this ends when I stopped being a hormonal, horny, teenager. Luckily, girls as beautiful as the Kocho sisters were rare. Are you okay, Seiji? Kane asked me. She was upside down in my vision as she looked down at me. I looked away and blushed. Yeah, I'm fine. Respectfully. It's okay. You just healed, maybe you are still not feeling well. Yeah, maybe. I said, knowing full well that no matter the condition I was in, I was destined to never win against waifus. Destroyer of demons, Seiji's POV, I'd rather watch a pig trying to climb a tree. Look away then, no one is forcing you to watch me. Shinobu said as she did. Whatever it was that she was doing with her sword. She moved with the grace of a feather, but it was clear that the sword was too heavy for her. The steel in her hand threw her entire posture off balance. It was a horrible sight to see. Can't you just go back to practicing with a wooden sword? I asked, my voice was hopeful. Shinobu was by no means a weak girl, she was simply normal while being surrounded by freaks of nature. She had the strength you would expect a 13-year-old girl to have. She could pick up the sword and swing it, a civilian won't even notice the problem. But with a trained eye, you could see that the sword was heavy for her. She was not strong enough to swing her sword, much less cut off a head. She was simply not meant to be a swordsman. Why don't you practice with a wooden sword? She said while performing movements similar to her sisters. Stop watching me. Honestly, I wish I could. But seeing her try to swing the sword in vain, I knew there was a big chance that she could hurt herself. My eyes were locked on her figure as she practiced. I could predict when and where an accident was going to take place by reading her body and the sword in her hand. Before long, I was proven right as the katana flew off her slender finger. I burst into action, using the concept of thunder breathing, I covered the distance in an instant. I was also moving before it actually happened, so I was just in time to catch the sword before it fell on her and graze her pale leg. She blushed and looked away. Thank you. I knew it did not ring out from the lack of air rushing out of her mouth, but I could read her lips. You're welcome. Would you listen to me now? I asked. She pursed her lips and her big round eyes looked up at me. They had no pupils and looked like the eyes of an insect, but it was beautiful. No. I think this is a great chance for me to give everything I have, knowing that you will save me if I mess up, she said under my eyes full of disbelief. I will take this, she said and took the sword from my hand. She slipped past me so that she could continue practicing on her own. I sighed. I watched her from a close distance, trying to advise her as best as I could while also saving her when she messed up. An hour passed and I couldn't hold it anymore. I knew I should leave it to her to find her own path, but it was unbearable. There was something triggering about seeing someone who I knew would be incredible, stray from her path. Most people wouldn't get it since most people didn't have eyes like mine. The closest thing I could compare it to was watching someone eat a burrito from the middle. You were simply not supposed to do it like that. So I said, "You're trying too hard to be like your sister." She stopped practicing and looked towards me. Beads of sweat fell down her dolly face and trailed on her perfect skin. "I know you deeply admire her, but you are not your sister and you never will be. You have to stop trying to imitate her," I said. She frowned, "But she is a Hashira, yes, but you are not blessed physically like she is." I cut her off and she clenched her fist in frustration. She knew that her body was not strong like her sister's. She was small and weak. It has been her greatest insecurity. You need to find areas where you are blessed as well. I can see something special in you, Shinobu, you just need to learn to see that too. I said genuinely. I hoped this time, my voice did not come out stoic. She remained standing in her place for a long time as she contemplated my words. Then she met my eyes with a question, "Tell me, what should I do?" I shrugged, "I don't know. That's for you to find out. But I do have some advice," I said and put a finger on my chin. Shinobu perked up, her eyes expectant. "Firstly, even though you suck at swinging your sword, you have no trouble stabbing, so you should polish that area," I said, and she knitted her eyebrows in thought. "But you can only kill a demon by cutting off its head." "Says who?" I asked. "The Demon King. The Almighty God. Yorichi." I shook my head. "Where there is a will, there is always a way. If you want to kill a demon enough, you should have no trouble finding ways to kill it. Like using poison," I said while biting down a smile. "Poison? But demons have great regenerative ability, poison would not work on them unless it's a why." She paused, her round eyes widening in a silent realization. "Yes, what if those poison has wisteria flowers? Remember, it was not a sword that brought the downfall of Muzan and Doma. It was poison." Then silence persists as she went deep into thought. She was testing the theory that came up in her mind, arguing against it and supporting it. "I'll take this," I said and slowly pulled the sword out of her hand. She was too deep in thought to even notice. "Seems like you figured out something, I will leave you to your thoughts," I said and walked away from her. The moment I turned around, my lips stretched into a smirk. This should help her figure out her fighting style sooner than she did in canon. Although it was questionable, I think I did the right thing. I went around the compound to enjoy the day. I was thinking of what I was going to do in the time being, but my thoughts were cut short when Raven landed on my head. "Oh, hey there princess, how've you been?" I asked and pet her head as she made herself comfortable in my hair. She nuzzled on my finger for a few seconds before she quickly collected herself. Her eyes turned dead again and she tapped on my scalp. I blinked. "There is someone for me." Raven said that someone was waiting for me outside of the mansion. I immediately headed towards the main entrance of the flower mansion, and that was when I met him again after a long time. Hattori. A quick recap for those who forgot. Hattori Kanazuka was the swordsmith who created my sword and delivered it to me. I ran towards him and bowed when I reached him. He had a wide smile on his face which I could see through his mask. It seems like I was not the only one who was happy we met again. "Ha ha ha ha, look at you now, my boy. Already a Hashira in 2 months. He said proudly and surprised me by wrapping his arms around me. He gave me a hug. "It's good to see you again too," I said as he let go. "But what brings you here?" "Oh, haven't they told you? Each Hashira gets a new sword made of the highest quality of scarlet Oregon. This sword will be exceptional, unlike the one I made you before." He then showed me the sword he had been carrying on his back. It was the exact replica of mine in terms of size and length, but I could immediately notice the difference when I held it. It was perfectly balanced, without flaw. Without another word, I drew the sword from its sheath and was immediately stunned when I saw the perfection of the blade. This is... Words got stuck in my mouth as I fully pulled out the sword. The first thing I noticed was the engravings at the start of the blade. The word, destroyer, was boldly written on it with kanji on the opposite side. It was also written, evil demons. Put them both together and it meant, destroyer of evil demons. The perfect edge of the blade reflected the light of the sun on my face. It was almost blinding. A true masterpiece, I said in amazement. My eyes took in every little detail of the blade and they agreed with every meaning held by the word. I could feel it. This was it. This was the sword that would end it all.